The snow was falling hard when Officer Mark Jensen got the call. An animal's cry had been heard deep in the woods. Most officers would have ignored it on a night like this, but something in Mark's gut told him to go. His flashlight cut through the storm, landing on drops of blood leading off the trail. He followed, heart pounding, until he reached a clearing and froze. There, half buried in the snow, was a pregnant German shepherd, her paw trapped in rusted steel, her body trembling from cold and pain. Yet, even in her suffering, she barked weakly, warning him not to come closer. What Mark would discover beneath her shaking body that night would melt even the coldest heart. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The wind howled through the pine forest like a wounded creature, scattering powdery snow across the empty trail. Officer Mark Jensen adjusted his scarf and pulled his flashlight closer to his chest, its beams slicing through the dark. Nights like this were quiet, too quiet. The kind of silence that made even your own heartbeat sound loud. His boots crunched through the fresh snow as he patrolled the remote outskirts of town, where hardly anyone ever came during winter. The radio on his shoulder crackled faintly with static, but no calls came through. Just the endless white and the whisper of trees bending under the weight of frost. Mark had seen it all: runaways, poachers, lost hikers, but tonight felt different. There was something in the air he couldn't shake off that he paused, kneeling near a half-frozen puddle where faint paw prints disappeared into the woods. They were fresh, larger than most strays he'd seen. He frowned, brushing snow aside, noticing a faint streak of red against the white ground. Blood. His pulse quickened. Someone, or something, was hurt. Gripping his flashlight tighter, Mark followed the trail into the darkness, unaware that this night would soon break his heart and heal it in ways he never expected. Mark's breath came out in pale clouds as he pushed deeper into the forest. The snow beneath his boots was no longer pristine. It was disturbed, scattered with prints and faint drops of crimson that glowed faintly under his flashlight. The pattern told a story. Something had been running, limping, fighting to survive. Easy now, he murmured to himself, scanning the darkness. The cold bit through his gloves, but he kept moving, guided by the uneven trail. Branches snapped underfoot, the wind hissed through the trees, and the forest seemed to hold its breath. The blood trail thickened, painting the snow in streaks that led toward a cluster of fallen pines. Mark knelt, brushing snow away from a tuft of fur caught on a jagged branch. German shepherd, he recognized it instantly. His heart sank. He'd seen too many abandoned dogs in these woods, victims of cruelty or neglect. But this was different. That he followed the path until his flashlight landed on something that made him freeze. A shape in the snow, still, trembling, half buried. The beam caught two terrified eyes staring back at him. A German shepherd, her paw clamped in a steel trap, chest rising in shallow breaths. Blood stained the snow beneath her. And in that instant, Officer Mark Jensen knew. This was no ordinary call. Mark dropped to his knees, his heart pounding louder than the wind. The German shepherd growled weakly, baring her teeth, but her eyes told another story. Not aggression, but terror. She was exhausted, trembling from pain and cold. Snow clung to her fur, her breath forming fragile clouds that faded as quickly as they appeared. The steel trap had bitten deep into her paw, blood mixing with ice beneath her. Hey, easy girl, Mark whispered softly, lowering his flashlight. I'm not here to hurt you. His voice carried warmth through the frozen air, a tone every K-9 officer learns. Calm, steady, human. He'd worked with dogs before, seen their bravery, their loyalty. But this one was different. Something in her eyes stopped him cold, a flicker of defiance, of protection. Then he noticed it. Beneath her body, a faint movement. Mark leaned closer, brushing snow away with his gloved hand. His breath caught. She wasn't just trapped, she was pregnant. Her body shielded a small hollow she'd dug, sheltering something fragile from the cold. Good girl, he whispered, his throat tightening. You're not giving up, are you? Her growl softened into a whimper, and in that moment, something unspoken passed between them. A wounded soul protecting life, and a man who suddenly realized he wasn't alone out here. He'd just met the bravest mother he'd ever seen. Snow began to fall harder, thick flakes swirling like shards of glass in the beam of Mark's flashlight. The temperature was dropping fast. He could feel it biting at his face, but the shepherd didn't move. Her body trembled violently, yet she stayed between Mark and the small hollow beneath her. He could see it now, two tiny shapes, still and silent under her warmth. Puppies. Barely alive. Mark's pulse quickened. "Okay, girl, I need you to trust me," he whispered, setting his flashlight in the snow. He pulled a multi-tool from his belt, his gloved hands shaking as he examined the rusted trap. The metal was old, stiff, cruel. Every second counted. He gritted his teeth and pried at the hinge, wincing as the dog whimpered in pain. "Hold on, girl. I got you," he muttered through clenched teeth. With a loud snap, the trap released. The shepherd gasped, collapsing into the snow, her paw bleeding freely now. Mark tore off his scarf, wrapping it tightly around her leg to slow the bleeding. "You're safe now," he said softly. The dog blinked up at him, her breathing ragged, but her gaze, steady, unblinking, was full of gratitude. In that storm, under the ghostly glow of his flashlight, a bond was forged between a man who refused to give up and a mother who never did. Mark gently lifted the shepherd into his arms, careful not to touch her injured paw. She was lighter than he expected, far too thin for a dog so close to giving birth. The pups beneath her whimpered softly, their tiny bodies pressed against the frozen earth. Mark quickly removed his jacket, wrapping them together inside it, creating a small cocoon of warmth. "You're okay now," he whispered, his breath fogging the air. "You're all going home." He trudged through the storm, snow whipping against his face. The forest seemed endless, every step heavier than the last. He could feel the shepherd's faint heartbeat against his chest, weak, but still fighting. When he finally reached his patrol truck, his fingers were numb, his body trembling. Inside, the heater roared to life. Mark laid the mother and her pups on a blanket, watching as the smallest one let out a soft squeak, the sound of life returning. The shepherd turned her head slowly, resting her nose against his sleeve, as if to say thank you. Mark smiled faintly through the blur of exhaustion. "You did all the hard work, girl," he murmured. And in that moment, the world outside the windshield, cold, dark, and bitter, didn't matter anymore. Inside the truck, there was warmth. And a miracle.by morning, the storm had calmed. Pale sunlight filtered through the frost-covered trees as Mark Jensen pulled into the nearest veterinary clinic, exhaustion etched deep in his face. The shepherd lay quietly in the passenger seat, her head resting near the bundle of newborn pups. For a moment, she lifted her eyes to meet his, tired yet peaceful. He smiled softly. "Hang in there, Mama. You made it." Inside the clinic, the vets worked quickly. They cleaned her wounds, treated the infection, and checked the pups. "She's lucky," one of them said. "If you hadn't found her last night." The sentence trailed off, but Mark didn't need to hear the rest. He already knew. Days later, the same officer who once dreaded lonely winter patrols found himself visiting the shepherd daily. The staff began calling her Hope, and her puppy's Faith, Brave, and Snow. When she was finally strong enough to stand, Hope limped toward him, pressing her nose into his hand. Mark felt something shift deep inside, a warmth he hadn't known in years. That he knelt, smiling through tears. "You saved me too," he whispered. And as the wind howled outside the clinic windows, the world didn't feel so cold anymore.